The new movie Emilia Perez is a perfect example of why I hate POC representation or representation in general as Hollywood uses it. So let's get into it. Recently, the movie Emilia Perez has been getting a lot of backlash and has been facing a lot of controversy because it has gone on to be nominated for so many esteemed awards, and it's won a couple of Golden Globes actually. It has 13 Oscar nominations lined up, and the film was not even enjoyable for the majority of audience members, specifically people from the trans community and the Mexican community, which this movie heavily represents. And that is my issue with POC representation and the way Hollywood uses this term representation as a way to gain attention, to generate numbers, and yet never actually value authentically telling the stories of these communities that are marginalized. The reason why I'm not surprised that a movie like Emilia Perez got so much praise is because it is very clear that these award ceremonies have an agenda rather than actually promoting and appreciating films that have gone on to do incredible things and move audiences. It is clear that right now, the Academy and other award ceremonies are prioritizing films that are supposed to say something rather than actual films that have brought meaning and moved audiences. The movie Emilia Perez is about a transgender drug dealer named Manitas who transitions into a woman, and in his transition must create a new life for themselves. And when they finally turn into Emilia Perez as we know them, she has to now come to terms with what it means to have let go of her past identity and find a way to lead her new life while also struggling to leave the old one behind because of people that she's loved in her past and still wanting them a part of her life. It's a very, very touching story in concept, right? What is it like for a woman who has transitioned to have to let go of this past identity that they have had for the majority of their life? How do they then reconcile those relationships with other people? And what is that journey like? It's a very interesting story, one that has not been explored. But Emilia Perez does a terrible job of actually grasping the difficulties that the character is going through and being able to explore what that feels like. The movie starts off with us being introduced to Rita. She works for people that are not good people. She defends people who have committed heinous crimes, protecting men who have killed women, and we never get a single scene where we see Rita come to terms with the work that she's actually doing. We see her grieve the fact that she's worked so hard and she's not making a lot of money, and she's not even an actual lawyer. She's an attorney in a defense case. She wishes that her life was more. But the actual moral dilemma at hand, the fact that she is this intelligent woman, yet she's defending these criminals, we never see her come to terms with that. We never see her character ever once reflect on the fact that she is the reason why a lot of these evil individuals have been let off the hook. And I think that is a really interesting plot point that should have driven the film, because the reason why a lot of evil people can do what they do is because there are intelligent people with big brains working behind them. But we never actually get to explore that with Rita. Then we meet Manitas, who knows Rita is a really, really talented attorney and is aware that the only reason why her defense lawyer is actually winning these cases is because of her. And so he gets his team to find her, kidnap her actually, and tells her that if she can find a doctor to help him transition into a woman, he will give her a large sum of money and she'll be set for life. And so she does so. She gets him a doctor who helps him transition, and he comes up with a plan to wrap up his life as Manitas. He gets his family out of Mexico, moves his wife and his 2 kids to Switzerland, fakes his death, which hits the news, and then is reborn as Emilia Perez. And that's when we get to actually see the film through Emilia's eyes as this new transitioned woman. But the issue is, as we're following Emilia, the movie kind of suggests that everything in her past life just never really happened. And I don't want to get too deep into the experience of a trans woman or a trans person in my analysis of this film, because that's not an experience that I can speak of. But the trans community has come out and said that the portrayal of the trans experience in this film is incredibly offensive. And one of the reasons why it is offensive is because the writers write as if once you've transitioned, the life that you lived before just didn't exist. And that's just not the case. Once we meet Emilia, we never actually look back at her life as Manitas, and Manitas was a cartel leader. That is a serious, serious position. This person was in charge of the deaths of thousands of people, violent deaths for that. The film details that Manitas is very, very powerful and is in his prime before his transition. And from the little knowledge that most of us know about cartels, we know that they're incredibly dangerous and that the leaders of these cartels are ruthless. And that is who Manitas was. He ran this cartel. He killed innocent people. He caused so much havoc, so much devastation. But then when we meet Emilia, they're just completely changed. And the only excuse that we get is, well, now that Emilia is actually able to be themselves, they are reflecting on their past life and they're just so regretful. And so they want to move forward and do the right thing. And so Emilia opens a nonprofit that is dedicated towards finding missing people in Mexico. Like, excuse me, bitch, but you're the reason why there are so many people that are missing in the first place. Like, are we going to talk about that or not? It just feels like she transitions and then automatically becomes this heroic character simply because she can be who she really wanted to be. And that almost suggests that the reason why she was so violent in her past was simply because she couldn't be honest with who she was, or the fact that she was forced to be a man and couldn't make that transition. And that's just not a good enough reason to excuse why someone would be so violent. And that's, again, the issue with Emilia Perez. Vulnerable people and their stories are being used as plot points rather than actually going into the experiences of these people, doing the research and the work to then write a script that truly tells as authentically as possible what this experience is like. Another thing that Emilia Perez did such a poor job of is actually reflecting the Mexican culture. Again, I'm not Mexican, so I can't speak on this too far, but even just as a non-Mexican watching this film, the whole time I was thinking, why do I not see enough of Mexico? Like, why do I know that they're Mexico? Because the characters keep saying that, but I never actually see Mexico for what Mexico is. The entire film, the only draws that we have towards this film being placed in Mexico is the fact that there are cartels involved, is the fact that Manitas was a cartel leader, is the fact that now Emilia Perez is trying to uncover missing people in Mexico, and that's it. It's all negative stereotypes, and we never actually see anything else of Mexican people, of Mexican communities and their culture. And then come to find out, that's probably because the director of this film was white. This film is directed by Jacques Audiard, who is a French filmmaker and is not Mexican or Latin American. And that right there kind of explains all the problems with Emilia Perez. Jacques Audiard has literally admitted that he did not do any research going into this film. He did not bother to research anything about the Mexican community or the trans experience. Being a filmmaker and telling stories is a great responsibility, but it's not something that is talked about enough. People forget that when we listen to these stories or when we watch something and we perceive it or take it in, it very much influences the way that we think, which also affects the way that we act towards other people. And when we get stories that are already so limited about people of color and other marginalized groups, it very much skews the public's perception of these people and their understanding of them. And that's why it is very important that people tell their own stories so that you can give it the most amount of honesty as possible. Obviously, there's never a case where one representation of one group is going to encompass the experience for everybody under that identity, but it certainly helps at the very least to say something that is honest. When you have someone like Jacques Audiard, who is white and cannot even A, relate to the race of these characters, or B, their experiences as Mexicans, or C, the experience of the main character being trans, you end up getting someone who oftentimes is telling a story that they don't quite understand and they miss a bunch of marks. And I'm not saying this to say that you can only tell stories that reflect your own identity. I do think that as storytellers and creatives, sometimes you can tell stories that aren't necessarily your own, but even then you have to do it with so much care and sensitivity and research. There's so much work that goes into it, so much additional work, because this isn't an experience that you know off the bat. Mexican people have come out loud and said that they were offended from seeing this film and seeing the representation of Mexican culture. Mexican culture is very rich, both in its music and its dance and its food. So the fact that this movie could not even scratch the surface of it says a lot. It says that we need to have people of these actual backgrounds telling these stories, or at the very least, someone who actually cares about these people telling that story, so that you can get a more realistic depiction of these people, right? Mexico does not come down to cartels, and it does not come down to just missing people. Obviously, these are very real issues, but that is not a nuanced or rounded perspective of Mexico and the experience for Mexicans. POC stories and representation is now being commodified by the industry to sell a film and to generate numbers and gain attention. We're being used as a gimmick and not actual people that deserve to have their stories told. And that's my issue with Emilia Perez. There were so many perspectives in this film that we have not seen enough of yet. We have not seen enough film about the trans experience, about Mexican people in general, about a woman in a male-dominated field, such as Rita as a lawyer, and yet the film could not grasp any of it. And I think that's simply because the people working on this film had no idea what this experience was like. Before I conclude this video, I have to say that the music in this film is god-awful. Like, it is so bad. I know everyone's been saying the same thing, so I don't feel like I need to repeat it, but I must say the music was garbage. I was literally like, how? How is this possible? It was so on the nose, and it never felt like it was actually incorporated in the story. A musical that's done right actually makes you feel more immersed in the story through the musical performances. But in Emilia Perez, I did not feel that. Rather, I felt like I was being placed out of the story for a second and just watching people move around and sing a song that wasn't even good. Like, the dance moves were not there, and the singing was god-awful. Like, what was actually happening? The song where she's talking to the doctor and they're literally singing to each other, like, zero creativity whatsoever.
Lady, you know, I only fix the body, skin, bones, but I will never fix the soul.
Boo. Where is the dancing? Like, at the very least, can the song be good? Like, can y'all get up and do something? It was just literally two people chatting to each other, but singing. And it wasn't good. The song had no harmony to it. I was like... The Oscars and other award ceremonies are not the end-all be-all of filmmaking in general. Like, I've kind of learned over the years that you should not bank all the meaning in the world into these award ceremonies, but they are super valuable because they appreciate and bring to light movies that deserve the attention. And so when you don't actually do a good job of picking out and nominating the right films that deserved that appreciation and acknowledgement, miss out on the opportunity. Films like Emilia Perez or Crash, which it has been compared to, are simply just trying to spoon feed an audience and tell a message that is very surface level and oftentimes is just a depiction of stereotypes. It's like they're trying so hard to send a message without actually understanding the message at hand. And I really hope that in the future, especially after all the backlash that the Oscars has been getting too, that they really reconsider how they evaluate films and what films they choose to nominate, because again, these award ceremonies are exciting and they should continue to be so. They should continue to be a moment for us to celebrate filmmaking and the art of films and the beauty in films. Of course, if you enjoyed this film, that is your decision, that is your take, but it's really important to also acknowledge, you know, the flaws in a story and find other films that might do a better job of representing people of color and marginalized groups, so that we're not just warped with these very surface level depictions that don't actually do justice to these experiences. That is my take on the controversy with Emilia Perez and the film in general. I'm so curious what you guys think. This is a very talked about film. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts? Make sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know. If you have not subscribed already, what is you doing, bro? Get to it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.